and welcome to this 30-minute restore class, prenatal class. I'm so happy to be here with you. We're going to start in just a short little meditation. So if you want to grab your wall, grab yourself close to a wall, maybe press your back up against the wall, maybe sitting on a block or a pillow, whatever feels most comfortable for you. Just getting comfy. So I like to teach practices that are good for all women in pregnancy, but the one that I'm focusing on here is the third trimester because that's where I am. So we're not going to do a lot of up and downs. We're going to be doing a lot of resting, relaxing, really working on the breath. So just really preparing ourselves for labor. And I'm very obviously passionate about yoga, even before I got pregnant, of course, and even more so now that I am pregnant, to really focus on the breath, focus on this time of meditation. So see if you can just take a few breaths here, calming the mind, calming the body, and just becoming still. Just noticing how you're feeling, like what kind of comes up for you as you start to think about giving birth to your baby, as each day you're getting closer and closer to meeting your baby for the first time. See if you can really come into that deep breath, breathing in through the nose, and then gently sigh out through the mouth. Just taking a few of those. Just becoming more light, finding more ease. Verse we're gonna meditate on today is from 2 Corinthians 12, 8-10. This is from the Voice. It says, I begged the Lord 3 times to liberate me from its anguish. And finally, he said to me, my grace is enough to cover and sustain you. My power is made perfect in weakness. So ask me about my thorn, inquire about my weaknesses, and I will gladly go on and on. I would rather stake my claim in these than have the power of the anointed one at home within me. I'm at peace and even take pleasure in any weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and afflictions for the sake of the anointed, because when I am my weakest, he makes me strong. Knowing that God is enough, that his peace is enough, that even in this weakness time, even in this time of being afraid or fearful of birth or nervous about birth, see if you can just lay down your fears, knowing that God is powerful in your weakness. That for when I am weak, then I am strong. That even in the weakest, he makes us strong. Just take a few moments to just take a pause in those words. Lord, we know that you are with us even as we move into this time of giving birth to our babies. May we just surrender it all to you when we think a thought that maybe we're afraid or we're inadequate or we can't do it or we're fearful. May we just lay that down and give that to you. Maybe even finding some verses that kind of works for us as we move into our time of labor. And know that where we are weak, that you are strong. Help us to just grow closer to you. Help our babies to grow closer to you. And may we just serve you each and every day. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Just go ahead and flutter your eyes open, maybe sitting on the tip of your pillow. I've really been enjoying sitting on my pillows here recently. Something that we're going to focus on today a lot is the hips. So really opening up our hips for labor, really breathing into that tension. But before we do that, see if we can just get into the neck just a little bit. So just kind of rolling your neck back and forth, maybe just side to side. Maybe you even want to close your eyes. And see if you tend to tighten your jaw. So if your jaw is a little tight here, see if you can just soften that. Maybe you just want to try and do this half circle, or maybe you want to do a full circle, just kind of circling all the way around, maybe even massaging your upper back, your shoulders, with your neck, with your head. And just breathing into any tension. Maybe drawing your circles the opposite way. Whenever you're ready, remember that this is your practice. You can pause this recording at any time if you feel like you need a pause. And just really softening your face, softening your jaw. And then gently coming back to center whenever you're ready. And knowing that the jaw is actually connected to your hips. So if you find that you're tensing your jaw, you're actually really tensing your hips. You got that tension in your hips. So whenever you notice that you're carrying that tension in your jaw, your face, see if you can just soften that. So whenever you're ready, just find those little circles. If you want to remove your pillow, you can. The pillow is kind of keeping you from moving a little bit. But see if you can keep your sits bone, so the bony parts of your bum, on the mat. So just finding those circles, breathing into the tension. I know I say this a bunch, but I personally like to close my eyes. Just kind of find whatever works for you. And maybe finding your circles the other way. And before we find some more movement here, see if you can either place both hands on your belly, or maybe one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly, whatever feels most organic to you. And I want you to just take a pause here, knowing that God is enough, that His grace is enough, that He's formed this baby in your womb exactly the way it's meant to be, and he or she will come whenever God has planned for him or her to come. And just saying whatever kind of affirmation kind of speaks to you, whether it is, I'm a good mother, my baby and I are healthy and happy and safe. I am enough to my baby. My God is enough for my baby. I have what it takes. Whatever kind of comes up to you, what comes up for you. Just taking that pause. Just allowing those affirmations to set in, speaking positive things to ourselves, positive things to our belly, our babies, our bodies. Gently flutter your eyes open when you're ready. Bring one hand on your right side. Maybe you want to grab a block if that helps, and then windmill your left hand up and over. So just breathing into your left side body. Just taking that pause, maybe even coming down onto your elbow if that feels comfy for you. Windmill your heart towards the sky. Making sure you're not lifting your left sits bones, your left butt cheek off the mat. And then just gently make your way over to the other side. Just really breathing into the side body, creating some length, creating some space there. Remember, we're being gentle and kind. And then gently come back to center. So as you start to get a little bit bigger in your belly, you're going to notice your body start to change. You're going to notice certain things happening. Gently make your way to your tabletop when you're ready. And remember, we're going to be gentle and kind. So, and creating some more space for our belly. So if you need to take your knees out a little wider, you can do that. We are going to get into the hips a little bit more today. So see if you can just find those hip circles. I teach this a lot. This is like one of my favorite things to do that I do by myself when I do my practice. And just getting into those sticky spots. Maybe you notice that your belly starts to rub against your legs. And instead of giving yourself any judgment, like feeling bigger or uncomfortable or wide, we're going to talk to ourselves nicely, being kind and gentle to our bodies. Knowing that this miracle is forming within us and that God has created us to house this very baby that we have. Being kind and gentle to our bodies. Gently make your hips, circle your hips the opposite way. So beautiful. So you can choose to stay in your hip circles if you want, or bump your right foot off the mat, root your right hand down, extend your left leg long, and windmill your left hand high towards the sky. So you can choose to stay here coming into this modified side plank, or bring your bicep by your ear, just breathing into that left side body once more. And then gently come back to your table. So especially as we move further along in our pregnancy, we're not focusing on twists, we're not laying down on our bellies, but we're more so focusing on the hips and the side body. So that kind of feels good, at least for me where I am in my pregnancy. So root your left hand down, reach your right hand high. So just find that other side. Maybe this feels good and you want to stay here, or bring your bicep by your ear. So lovely, inhale. And then exhale, gently come back. Coming back to your table. So if you want to stay in your table, you can. We're just going to do one downward facing dog. So if you want to press your palms on your blocks, have a little bit extra support, you can. Peel your toes under and make your way to your down dog. Remember, if your belly's a little bit bigger and you need to take your feet out wider, you can go ahead and do that. If you're newer in your first trimester and you've been feeling really nauseous, which is not fun, and you find yourself becoming nauseous in your down dog, you just want to bring your gaze in between your hands. So just kind of find whatever feels good for you. You want to pedal out your knees. Maybe you want to rock side to side. Lightly bend your knees, bring your, point your heart towards your feet, towards your toes. Maybe you want to stay here, or bring your right foot high towards the sky. Come into your three-legged dog. So you can choose to stay here, or bend your right knee, square your right hips towards the side wall, square your shoulders towards the mat. So we're getting into those hips. Just strengthening up, opening up those hips to those deeper stretches we're about to do here. Inhale. Exhale, bring your right foot down. Taking that pause, kind of noticing that space. Remember, you can come into child's pose whenever you need to, or move to the other side. Reach your left leg high. Maybe you want to stay in your three-legged dog, or flex your left knee so your hips are square towards the side wall. Your shoulders are square towards the mat. Flex your right foot, or your left foot rather. Inhale. Exhale. One more breath in, and then exhale, slowly come down, taking a pause in your down dog, and then gently come into your child's pose. If you want to take a pillow and bring it in between your belly and the mat, you can go ahead and do that. Maybe find a little rest. Maybe notice if the heart rate kind of sped up towards the end of your pregnancy. You'll find any little movement kind of get you out of breath. So see if you can really catch your breath here. And hear these words once more from the NIV, 2 Corinthians 12, 8-10. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power has been made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. As we prepare for labor, as we may feel weak or scared or anxious, knowing that God is with us, God is enough. Where we are weak, He is strong. Your body is made to house this baby, bring life to this baby. I'm just saying any other affirmation or mantra that kind of feels organic to you here as you kind of say these words, as you move your body, as you move into this practice, finding one more breath in. Exhale, sigh out. And then when you're ready, gently move into a half pigeon. So see if you can bring your right knee, so kind of crisscross your legs. So two options here. You can either come into half pigeon, extending your left leg long, square your hips towards the mat. If your belly's getting bigger and you kind of hinge over and that feels kind of pressure on your belly, and go ahead and bring your knee to meet your right foot, and then just hinge over your right hip there, your right leg. You can use your blocks if you need them. They're there to help you. They're there to move the floor closer. So if that's too intense, but see if you can kind of keep that right leg parallel. So you're really hinging over your right leg, really feeling it in your hips. So we're really going to get into the hips. If this is too much, I want you to come out of this shape. We're going to listen to our bodies. And remember that when we're pregnant, we have that hormone of relaxin. So it feels like we can get a little deeper, but we don't want to overdo it. So making sure we're taking that pause to listen to our bodies, listen to what we need. Maybe you're feeling it a little bit in the low back, which feels good too. And just take about 4 big breaths here on your own. Really learning to breathe through the tension. We're about to have lots of tension when we're in labor. So I've been reading a lot of pregnancy books that are so informative. Sometimes I get a little crazy with them, but it says that pain isn't always pressure. So even though we have pressure, it might not be painful, but in our mind, we might think it's pain. But see if we can breathe through the tension. So tension isn't always pain either. So see if we can breathe through the tension, through the pressure, preparing our minds and our hearts and our bodies for labor. Getting closer and closer to meeting our babies, taking one more breath in, exhale, sigh out. So you can choose to stay here. If you're like, I love half pigeon, I'm gonna stay here, that's okay. Or extend your left leg long, bring the right foot to your inner thigh, and then just find that wide-legged, single-seated leg extension. It's always a long one for me. So if you wanna use your props, you can. If you don't, that's okay too. I love this little shape because I love putting my pillow here, my block, and then elbow to block, and then just kind of hinge over that left leg. Flex your left foot. You can even add the arm if you want to come into that side body once more. So there's lots of options here, but see if you can make this really restorative. See if you can just find rest here. Taking those about 4 breaths in every pose. Inhale and exhale. Finding 3 more on your own. And that God is saying to you, His grace is enough to cover and sustain you. His power is made perfect in your weaknesses. Taking one more breath in, so lovely. Exhale, sigh out. We're learning that breath, that breath to carry us through life, that breath to carry us through labor. And we're just gonna find our way to the other side. So if you wanna face the other side of your mat, you can. If you wanna make your way to the same side, this is your practice, however you like it. So you can find that half pigeon, sending your left leg back, hips are square, and just hinging over your left leg, or you can bring that right knee towards the palm of your left foot. Maybe grab your blocks. Remember, they're there to help. And then hinge over your left leg. And just take those 3 big breaths in and out. So see if you can make your breaths even bigger and deeper. Maybe even coming into a breath prayer. Maybe even coming back to those affirmations. I am a good mother. My baby and I are happy and healthy and safe. Seeing if you can soften your jaw and your face. Gently rise, or maybe stay right where you are. If you love half pigeon or this modified half pigeon, or even figure 4, if that's more comfortable for you, you can go ahead and do that, or extend your right leg long, coming into the other side. So remember, you can just go ahead and find your little stretch here, flex your right foot, or maybe add your props. So I found this shape. Well, I've done this shape before, but this more restorative shape in my teacher training for my prenatal teacher training, and I just loved it. I could just stay here. So if you're like me and you want to pause and just stay right here, that's great. Maybe you don't like it, and that's okay too. You want to make sure that you're listening to your body. See if you can just soften any area that you may be holding tension. And one more big breath in. Exhale, sigh out. Maybe you want to do an audible sigh, whatever feels comfy for you. And we're gonna come into frog. So a few options. You can either come into frog, if that's your jam, which is, I'm gonna show you that last, or you can just extend your legs out long. So the main thing we wanna do is get into the hips just a little bit more before we find our final resting pose. So you can either hinge over your hips, finding your wide-legged forward fold. This feels really good in your hips. Flex your feet towards the sky, really opening up that space. If this is too much or uncomfortable, you can come into this diamond shape. So bring the palms of your feet together, maybe even bring some blocks underneath your knees. So this is really good. I like to take my elbows and kind of press them against my thighs to just kind of open that up. So you're not only breathing into your low back, you're breathing into your hips. So these are really good shapes to take just if you have a few minutes and you're like, okay, I just want to take a little bit of time to just work on my hips. Or if you would like to, before we get into frog, actually, I forgot our double pigeon. So this is something I've actually been doing pretty much every day to just prepare my hips for birth. So you can do either of the shapes I just showed you, or you can stack your right foot over your left. So I'll show you frog last. Or if you're in frog already and you love it, you can go ahead and get into that. It's really good for me personally. This has been a harder shape for me. So if you want to bring a pillow or a block underneath your right butt cheek, if your right foot's on top, you can go ahead and do that. So if this is too much, you want to make sure you're coming out of it, but this is really going to help us practice breathing through the tension, because we're going to find that tension in labor, especially if we're trying to prepare ourselves for a natural labor. So whatever labor you choose is the best for you and your body and your baby. So something I'm trying to prepare myself for is a natural labor. So if you're there with me, see if you can really breathe through the tension. Really open up those hips. And maybe you want to hinge over your hips, but not too much, because we're not going to push ourselves, remember. We're just breathing through the tension, taking a big breath in. Big sigh out. Maybe you want to stay here if this feels good. Flex your feet. Whenever you feel like you need to come out, slowly come out. Whenever you're ready, there's no rush. And then just gently make your way to the other side. Maybe bringing that pillow or block on the opposite side. Stack your left over your right. So my left side is more tight than my right. So it just kind of depends on your body. I usually just take a few breaths every day to just kind of breathe through that tension. Maybe you want to tense your fingertips on either side of you, hinge over your hips, and whatever works for you here, really getting into that tension. So see if you can really soften. So I naturally just want to bite down on my jaw and just clench, but see if you can just soften. They even say, I don't know if I've shared this in other classes, but some women like open their mouth or sing during labor because it's helpful to be more open in your jaw and your mouth, so you're able to be more open in your hips. Just really finding that gentle breath. One more big breath in. Exhale, sigh out. Maybe bring the palms of your feet on the mat or the floor and just enjoy it back and forth. So last little hip stretch, the frog that I mentioned. You can go ahead and find whatever shape you've kind of found that feels good to you. If you want to take your legs out wide, maybe find another hip stretch. If you're like, okay, I'm done with the hips, like you can do whatever, but I don't want to do any more hips. Or if you want to do one last little hips, you can move into frog, coming into all fours. Take your knees about as wide as you can. I have a wall behind me, which is really helpful. So I press my feet up against the wall. So your hips are aligned, in line with your knees. Your knees are over your ankles and your feet are flexed. You want to take a pillow and bring it underneath your belly. So depending on how big your belly is, maybe this is uncomfortable for you and you want to make sure you're coming out of it. For me personally, I've slept on my belly since I have always known myself to sleep on my belly. So this is something that is like the only way I can be on my belly because I really miss it. So if this is something that is comfortable for you, I'm going to invite you to find it. Maybe even pressure your buns, your butt a little bit closer towards the back, towards the wall if you have a wall behind you. And just see if you can breathe through that tension. We'll be here for just a few breaths. Remember, we're not doing anything too crazy, holding it too long. Just see if you can breathe through that tension here. Remember, you can stay in any shape for as long as you'd like to. If anything ever hurts or is painful, I'm going to invite you to come out. When you're ready, gently walk your knees closer together. Coming back to our tabletop, just taking a pause. So see if you can just kind of notice how you feel more open in the hips. You may feel more relaxed. And I'm going to invite you to find whatever you need before we find our final resting pose. So for me, I just feel like I want to take one more down dog. So if you want to find one more down dog, kind of noticing how this down dog feels different than the other. You can go ahead and find that. Maybe you want to rest in a child's pose or gently make your way onto your back. Maybe you want to add some extra support for your pillow. So remember, we can't really lay flat on our backs once we have a bigger belly. I usually just have my knees facing the sky. this is uncomfortable for you, I'm gonna invite you to come onto your left side. And then just find whatever you need. So if you need a happy baby, that's kind of becoming uncomfortable for me. So I'm just gonna find a figure 4 and just rock side to side. Just kind of getting into those hips one last little time. Remember, we don't want to do many twists. If you need to find a waterfall, that's really good. Maybe you want to end your practice with legs up a wall. And just take whatever you need before we find our final resting pose. You're ready, you can choose to stay on your back, knees to the sky, or maybe roll over to your left side, preferably. Maybe bring a block in between your knees, pillow at your head, whatever is most comfy for you. And just go ahead and find your final resting pose. Just taking about 10 or so breaths here. I'm just choosing to find rest. Big breath in and a gentle sigh out. Maybe you want to find one more of those, or just find some gentle movements in your fingers, your toes. Rolling over to one side if you're not already there. And then just gently making your way to your seat. Maybe one hand on your heart and one hand on your baby. God, we thank you for your presence. We thank you for this child. I pray that each and every mother here just has a wonderful, safe, healthy birth. And that we're able to just focus our eyes on you, knowing that in our weakness, you have made us strong. Knowing that you are enough. Help us to just come back to your presence, come back to the space every time we feel anxiety, every time we feel frustrated or inadequate. May we just come back to your presence, especially as we are preparing to give birth. Help us to grow closer to you each and every day. It's in your name that we pray. Amen. And namaste. Thank you so much for joining me as always. I hope that this brought you lots of peace. If you ever want to talk about birth things, please feel free to reach out. I love talking about all the birth things, or if you need any extra resources for giving birth or more about natural birth, I would love to chat with you more, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.